Hey guys, welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide, another episode of the Guys Network. Hey, it's wintertime here at Lake Fork. That means a lot of opportunities to catch big bass. One of the very best baits to do it is going to be the chatterbait. So today, we're going to discuss wintertime bass fishing tips for targeting big bass on Lake Fork with a chatterbait. Really big one. Well, if you watch this channel very much at all over the years, then you'll probably be well aware that a chatterbait is probably my favorite bait to throw year-round. It is a year-round bait for me, no doubt about it, but it shines the most. The time when it's the most effective is going to be in the wintertime. There's something about the quality of a chatterbait, the vibration, the noise it makes with the blade hitting the head and all that good stuff. It just gets wintertime fish to bite better than just about anything else. You know, we've been talking here lately about a jig, a jerkbait, and now a chatterbait. All three of these baits are just tremendous baits in the wintertime. And the deal is, in the wintertime, as these fish get cold, they get real reluctant to bite. They get real lethargic. And so having something that can cause a reaction out of those lethargic bass is what's going to allow you to catch some really big bass throughout the winter months. Now, I want you guys to remember as we go through this today, I'm specifically talking about fishing a chatterbait in the wintertime. There are different trailers and different retrieves and different methods that I use later on throughout the year. But right now, we're going to talk specifically today about wintertime cold water fishing. And for that, we're going to get into the equipment. So there's about 5 different colors of chatterbaits that I will use. First one's going to be white or just a shad pattern like this right here. I also throw just straight green pumpkin a lot, but I also throw the Beehive Delight. So we got white, we got green pumpkin, and then Beehive Delight, which is chartreuse and white on bottom, green pumpkin on the back. Now, I will say in the winter months, I probably throw this color right here the least. Black and blue. Black and blue is another color I throw a lot in the wintertime. And then, of course, here lately, this is kind of a new addition for me. This is called Hot Crawl. It's green pumpkin on top with a little bit of red flake, and then red, as you can see, on bottom. And I use a green pumpkin trailer with it. We'll talk about the trailers here in a minute, but those are the 5 colors I'm using. White, green pumpkin, Beehive Delight, black and blue, and then Hot Crawl. You know, I got to tell you, anything that Brett Hite puts his name on color-wise, I'm in. Guy might be the best chatterbait fisherman in the world. If he's designing colors, they're probably going to be pretty good. And one thing that I like about all these Hite colors, if you look at either whether it's Beehive Delight or whether it's this Hot Crawl, they have a contrast. The top's one color, the bottom's the other. Top's one color, bottom's the other. And what that's going to do is as that blade, or as that chatterbait is vibrating through the water, it's going to flash that color at the fish. So if you can imagine, if the bottom of my hand is chartreuse, it's going to flash and pulse that chartreuse at them really, really fast as it goes through the water. That's really going to get their attention. That's really going to add another reaction quality to an already great reaction driven bait. And let's be honest, in the wintertime, a lot of times our water is a little bit dirtier than other times of year. And having those colors flash like that is going to help them show up that much better in that dirty water as well. As far as trailers go, guys, in the wintertime for me, there's one trailer. Now, I do use, you know, like Divine Swim Baits. I use Impact Sheds. I will use a few different types of trailers in the other times of the year. But in the wintertime, there's one. Lake Fork Tackle, Live Magic Shad. To me, it's been, they've knocked it off. A few different companies have knocked it off over the years. None of them have got it quite right. I've tried the Yamamoto Seiko, not a fan. Strike King one, not really a fan. Not for wintertime fishing. There's just not one that has the thinness of the gaps along with the bulk of the plastic outside of the gaps, along with the flat tail. All that combines for this slow lethargic action behind the chatterbait. The chatterbait's going brrr, brrr, and the trailer's just slowly winding behind it. It's just a natural, slow, lethargic action that fish and prey are naturally going to have in these colder water temps. And it really works. Over the years, everything I've tried, the Live Magic Shad, hands down, gets the most bites for me in the wintertime. So what colors of trailers do we need to pair up? Well, I like to match. I'm pretty much a matching guy for the most part. You know, black and blue, I use a black and blue Live Magic Shad. White, I'll either use pearl white. If the water's dirtier, I'll use a pearl white trailer. Like this here. Or if the water's a little bit cleaner, I'll use the, I think that color is called Magic Shad. I can't remember, but it's just a gray, silverish, natural shad looking color. But again, matching the colors. On both the Height Hot Crawl and the Be Height Delight, I like to use green pumpkin trailers on both of those. Now, one thing I will do, especially with the Height Hot Crawl, is if the water's dirty, and listen, if the water's real dirty, I'll take a Be Height Delight and I'll put that sucker right there on it. Neon orange, a little bit of chartreuse, get it done. On the Height Hot Crawl, I'll put this other sunfish color on here. It's got a little bit darker green pumpkin back and an orange belly. When the water does start getting dirty, if the black and blue is not working, if the plain white's not working, I'll play around with those colors as well. So that's all my color options. You can see I've got an entire box full of live magic shads, and that's pretty much the colors: black and blue, green pumpkin, shad, white, more natural shad in bigger sizes over here, and then of course the oranges for when the water gets real dirty. Now, one thing I will say, there is a time and a place to throw the bigger one. Right now, all these chatterbaits that I have rigged up have the 3.5 inch live magic shad. That's the smallest size. But the 4.5 inch definitely has its place as well, and I'll show you the difference between the two. There's a pretty big difference between those two baits right there, as you can see. Especially here on Lake Fork, big fish fisheries. If they're biting a chatterbait pretty good in the wintertime, if I'm getting quite a few bites on it, I'll go ahead and size up to that bigger trailer to try and target bigger fish. If I'm not getting very many bites at all, then I'll downsize the trailer to try and get a couple more bites. That's just my general theory on that. One thing I will say, if you're going to fish these 4.5 inch ones on these chatterbaits to make it fit right, make it flow right, make the hook point come out at the right place, see that little notch right there? You want to go ahead and trim it right at that notch, just like that right there. Okay, so let's talk rod, reel, and line. As far as rod and reel, it's really simple, man. I like something over 7 foot. It needs to be 7.3 to 7.5, somewhere in there, and it needs to be like a medium heavy type rod. Now, the rod that I actually use is one of the original Lux series models that 6 Sense made. It's actually called a 7.5 heavy, but it has a moderate tip, and it's closer to me to a medium heavy than it is a heavy. It does have a lot of backbone down on the bottom, but the tip has a tremendous tip. You want a rod with a lot of tip to allow that fish to load up. A lot of these bites, like you guys saw me catch some fish on Sam Rayburn on Monday's video on a chatterbait. Those were not bites where they're just hitting it, man. It was very soft, barely loading up. You really needed to have that softer tip to be able to get that hook into that fish without pulling it away from it or jerking it and just barely skin hook it and then eventually losing the fish. So the rod's very important. Now, I don't set the hook, and we're going to talk about that here a little bit later. Setting the hook's very important, because I do fish, even the rod I fish, I'm talking about the tip and everything, man, there's a lot of guys that fish it on a lot softer rod than I do. There's guys that fish it on pure glass rods to get that extra bend in the rod. I don't like doing that because I'm always fishing it around a lot of grass, and I feel like that bait gets bogged down and I waste too many casts with grass wrapping around the bait when I use too soft of a rod. So I actually overpower my gear a little bit and I tone down my hook set is how I handle it. We'll talk about that when we get into the retrieve. As far as line goes, most of the time I'm using 20-pound fluorocarbon throughout most of the year. There is a place for braid, however. If the grass maintained its health and stayed pretty thick through the fall and made it in the winter where you got a lot of thick grass in the water you're fishing, well, as the winter goes on, this grass will soften up. And when those stems start to soften, man, your chatterbait's really going to get bogged down in that grass a lot more. If you're fishing more coontail than you are hydrilla, coontail has a softer stem, it will bog your chatterbait down worse than hydrilla will. But as the wintertime goes on, they all get pretty soft. If the grass is thick and it's too soft, then I'm going to go to braid, and the braid that I use when I do that is going to be 30-pound braid. Now, so far this year, even though we're in the throes of winter, the water temps are creeping down into the 40s here at Lake Fork. Last week on Rayburn, they were in the 50s. The grass just hasn't really been that thick. So even though the grass stems are beginning to get soft, I've been able to get away with fluorocarbon. Basically, what you want to do is, if you can fish the chatterbait efficiently through grass with fluorocarbon, I think fluorocarbon is better. Again, a little bit more stress, a little bit more stretch for loading up on the hook set. And that's really the key component. I'm not too worried about fish seeing a moving bait line. I'm not too worried about them hearing it. It's already going, popping through grass. The chatterbait itself is making noise in the water. So I'm not worried about any of that. It's really just about, I'd rather have fluorocarbon for that little bit of extra stretch on the line than braid has. I think I failed to mention this earlier, but as far as the brand of chatterbait that I'm using, it's without a doubt the Evergreen Z-Man Jackhammer. The Jackhammer chatterbait, yes, I know they're $20. I realize they are way too expensive. That being said, to me, they are the best. And if you look at the ones that I've used a lot, you'll see where they've worn the paint off the head, right where the blade contacts it. The way that blade contacts the head is just second to none. The original Z-Man Chatterbait used to be really, really good. They changed one of the snaps on it. That snap mate was a little bit heavier than the original snap, and now that original Z-Man won't vibrate at as slow of speeds as the jackhammer will. It used to, and when it did, it was fine. The only bad thing about the original Z-Man was back then, it would vibrate good, it got bites good, but it would fall apart. I broke hooks, I broke snaps, I broke blades. I mean, they would fall apart if you used them a lot and you caught big fish on them. But for $4 versus $20, I still use them right up until they changed that line type. And when I couldn't roll that chatterbait quite as slow and get it to vibrate, that changed everything for me. I had to start buying the jackhammers. The good news is, you don't really lose a whole lot of chatterbaits. They do hang up a lot, but if you're in a boat, you're typically shallow enough, you can go over there and get them off whatever they're hung up on. Going back real quick one time to the braid, I said, what you gotta do is you gotta figure out how efficiently you can fish it in the grass. And so if your grass is too thick, too soft, and you're bogging down, switch to braid. Also, you guys that are newer to a chatterbait, it might be easier for you to fish a chatterbait through grass on braid until you get a better feel for feeling that grass coming, because that's a key component of this deal. The earlier you can feel the grass and snap it and make it pop out of that grass, the better it's going to be, because what you really want to achieve is these subtle jumps out of the grass. You don't want to be up there ripping. You just want that bait to come along, hesitate for a split second, and pop out kind of subtly. And so if you're new to it, it may be better for you to go ahead and fish braid on your chatterbaits, just to help you get it through the grass more efficiently and have those better pops out of the grass where you will generate those reaction bites. So on gear ratio, similar deal there. I recommend for most people to fish like a 6 something to 1, a 6.3 to 1, a 6.5 to 1 gear ratio reel. One thing about a chatterbait though, you can really feel that blade vibrating. And in the wintertime, we want to roll it really slow a lot of times. And when you're doing that, you can mentally concentrate on the speed of the blade. You can feel it on your rod tip. You just slow roll, and you just want to barely get that blade turned a lot of times. And that's going to force you to slow your hands down. I actually do fish a chatterbait on a 7.5 to 1. But it doesn't affect me negatively because I'm not worried about, sometimes my hand's only turning this fast. But mentally, I'm just focused on the blade. How fast is the blade vibrating? That's what really matters. And my favorite reel to throw this on these days is the Team Lose Light Speed Spool, LITE. This is maybe my favorite reel I've ever had. It's a sharp looking reel, silver with gold trim. It's got these cork handles, but this reel is smooth. Every single customer that gets in my boat that picks up this rod and this reel and throws it, they all make a comment on how great this reel is. If you're looking for a very, very good reel, as good as it gets, Team Lose Light Speed Spool, LITE. Can't recommend that one enough. I love it, love it, love it. So what type of areas do we concentrate on in the wintertime to find fish that'll bite a chatterbait? Well, as we said, grass is key. Grass is a big deal. Finding grass in the wintertime is going to help your chatterbait bites go up. Now, you can throw chatterbaits around wintertime shallow water in this region without grass and get some bites. But your size and number of bites is definitely going to go up if you're around grass. And a lot of our lakes do have immense amounts of grass. When they do, how do you decipher where will those fish be within that grass flat in the wintertime? Well, really it's about the depth changes, the drains, the creek channels, stuff like that. So what you're looking for is edges of creek channels or drains. And a lot of times in those drains and creek channels, the grass won't grow in the bottoms, but it'll grow right up to the edge of it. That is an ideal scenario. And if you can find where one of those intersects, where you got a secondary drain runs into a main creek channel and it creates that little grass point and creates those bends, all that stuff, any irregularities within those depressions going back in these shallow flats, that's the deal. The bottom line is, guys, fish start spawning in this part of the world in early February most years. Not a lot, but a few will. And down at Rayburn, there's some fish that might already have started spawning because the water was 60 degrees 2 weeks ago when I was there. But the truth of the matter is they will start spawning for sure in February. Well, that makes January pre-spawn month. And that means these fish are gonna have, some of these fish are gonna have to start making their ways into these shallow flats and staging up in these shallow creek channels and these shallow drains. For instance, right behind me right now, this area does not have grass in it. I'm out here on Lake Fork today, but there is a creek channel that comes over here and makes a big S curve like this, kind of going up towards this point and then funnels on back into a flat back in this corner. This is a great example of a place that I like to look for. It's kind of at the mouth. There's a pocket over here and a pocket over there. And we're right here at the mouth, and the creek channel comes up here and makes a big S curve right here with I think it's like 4 different bends right in here. stumps all along it, even though there's no grass. I wish there was grass here. There used to be grass here, but even without the grass, this is a pretty darn good area for a non-grass area for a chatterbait. Well, I think Skeeter thinks it's a good area. Watch out, don't step on the rods now, or the hooks. So that's basically what you're looking for in areas. You're looking for really, really shallow flats. Those are going to warm up the quickest. And if you can find the depressions, creek channels, drains, junctions, all that kind of stuff within those really shallow flat areas that will warm up early, hey, that's what you're looking for in January and February. All right, so let's get up here on the front deck and show you guys exactly how we're retrieving, exactly how slow we retrieve this bait sometimes. Right, so we're gonna go ahead and make a cast across a couple of these creek channel bends right in here. Long cast. First thing that's real important is your rod position. You want to hold your rod kind of straight out to maybe slightly up. Somewhere right in there is where you want to hold your rod. And the reason that is, that's going to allow you to, when you hit grass, that's going to allow you to have immediate leverage on the bait. So when you're going along, you hit grass, and I just hit bottom or something right there, but you're going along, as soon as you start to feel that grass bog that chatterbait down just a little bit, snap it like that, and it'll have that subtle darting action up out of that grass that you're really looking for. The other thing that's going to do too is when you get these soft, subtle bites, sometimes it'll feel like grass widen up, and you'll just go to pull, and that rod being in that position right there, you're immediately going to start putting pressure on that fish, and as it loads up, you can come to here and go ahead and set the hook. And it's really just a pull. It's not something where you want to snap it. That's not what you want to do with a chatterbait. Something about that chatterbait, the way they bite it soft, they load up on it a lot, and also with that, I think with that blade on the front of it, man, when you go to blowing them out on that hook set, especially with a heavier rod, which is going to make it easier for you in the grass, but with that heavier rod, you go to setting the hook like that, and you're going to blow that bait out of their mouth, or you're going to just barely skin hook them. You're going to end up losing that fish anyway. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to just how slow my hands turn, and that blade is still vibrating. See how slow my hands are turning? But I can see my rod tip bouncing. I can feel that blade, and now I'm just bouncing along the bottom with that blade vibrating away. And there's definitely, if you watch some of the catches we had on Sam Rayburn on Monday's video, definitely a place to turn the bait this slow when you're fishing a chatterbait in the wintertime. In fact, I do it quite a bit. Now, the only time I'll turn it faster really in the wintertime is when that grass, if I turn it that slow, it's getting too bogged down in the grass. So if we had grass here, I might have to turn it about this fast, and it would tick the grass and I'd pop it. Really what you want to do is you want to move that chatterbait up and down throughout the water column to where you're just barely hitting the top of that grass and popping it out. And you want to control the depth with your reel handle, not your rod tip. Don't point your rod tip down to get it low. Don't point your rod tip up to keep it high. Speed it up a little bit if it needs to stay higher. Slow it down a little bit if it needs to get lower. Always keeping your rod in that right position so that you can pop it out of the grass with immediate leverage correctly, or you can set the hook with that pull hook set correctly. I've fished a chatterbait a lot, and I'm telling you guys, over the years I found this to be so important, your rod positioning on this retrieve. It's going to make you fish in that grass a lot better. It's going to make you get the kind of burst out of the grass that are going to draw bites, and on top of that, it's going to make that pull hook set a lot easier on you. What I always tell people, and y'all have heard me say this before, I'm sure, if you watch this channel a lot, but you can go ahead and pull as hard as you want to. Just don't jerk. So right now I'm reeling along. Once it starts loading up, I'm gonna ease up, feel a little load. I'm just gonna pull to the side, and I'm gonna burn that reel handle. Once I got him here, I'm gonna pull him hard as I can to make sure I drive that hook in that way. All right, guys, that's how I fish a chatterbait. Like I said, and like y'all seen in some of the clips in today's video, we catch a lot of really, really, really big fish in the wintertime on a chatterbait for a lot of years now. So hey, try these tips out. Hopefully it'll help you catch more and bigger bass. I sure appreciate you guys watching today as always, and we'll see you next time right here on your Lake Fork Guide. Skeeter, where's the fish at? Where they at, girl? She looked in the water. They in the water. They in the water, Dad.